Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we are unpacking the invisible forces that shape our everyday lives. I mean, these forces dictate literally everything, from the food on our plates to the very screens we're looking at right now. You know, we constantly hear that we live in a global village, right? But how did that village actually get built? And, maybe more importantly, who gets to live in the fancy center of town and who's stuck out on the outskirts?
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to take a second and actually look at the tag on your shirt. Or maybe check the back of your smartphone, or even just glance down at the shoes on your feet. Where were they made? Chances are the raw materials were sourced on one continent, they were manufactured on another, and then they were shipped to you on a completely different third continent. We kind of just accept this massive global web as a basic fact of modern life, don't we? But the systems running underneath it all are incredibly complex and honestly, deeply transformative.
And this brilliantly illustrates what I mean. Just look at these bustling streets in Asia. Right alongside the local shops and international signs, what do you see? You'll very likely spot the familiar golden arches of a McDonald's. It's a pretty stark reminder of just how small, interconnected, and, well, culturally homogenized our world has actually become. You can literally travel thousands of miles across the globe and still end up consuming the exact same brands.
So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the globalization debate. Then we'll explore the idea of a shrinking world, followed by the digital divide. After that, we'll tackle the global shift, and finally, uneven geographical development. We're going to uncover the complex machinery running right underneath our seemingly unified global village.
All right, jumping right into Section 1, the globalization debate. We're looking at two competing views of global integration.
Now, there are two main competing perspectives on global integration, and it's absolutely crucial that we look at both of them impartially. Proponents, who usually align with neoliberal views, argue that globalization is basically the tide that lifts all boats. They believe that free trade and global integration allow countries to access new technologies, spread wealth around, and ultimately eliminate poverty. But on the flip side, critics point out that this process actually severely distorts development. They argue it creates a sort of neo-modernization that mostly just benefits wealthy nations and megacorporations, leading to extreme global inequality and exploiting vulnerable populations. Now, we aren't here to pick a side today, but rather to understand that every single global process we discuss is going to be viewed through these two very different lenses.
Moving on to Section 2, a shrinking world. This is all about the annihilation of space by time.
So, the crucial concept to grasp here is time-space compression. And no, this isn't about the physical Earth actually getting smaller. It's the process where massive continuous improvements in transport and communication technologies drastically reduce the time it takes to cross physical distances. You see, in a capitalist system, time literally costs money, and that creates this endless, insatiable demand for efficiency. We are just constantly innovating to move goods, money, and people faster and faster. To really picture this, look at how this dense geographical concept translates into human history. Back in the 1500s, sailing ships moved at a pretty sluggish 10 miles per hour. By the 1850s, the steam train pushed us up to 65 miles per hour. Fast forward to the 1960s, and suddenly commercial jets are rocketing across the sky at 500 to 700 miles per hour. A journey between continents that used to take months of really perilous travel now takes just a matter of hours. The world has essentially folded in on itself.
Which brings us to Section 3, the digital divide, connected and excluded.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the incredible local empowerment taking place. In many parts of Africa, people didn't just sit around waiting for traditional landlines to be built. They engaged in technological leapfrogging and jumped straight to mobile phones. We see village entrepreneurs setting up entire businesses just to recharge phones using car batteries. Or look at systems like Kenya's M-Pesa, which completely revolutionized mobile banking. It allows people to transfer money and save up without ever having to set foot in a traditional bank. This is grassroots globalization at its absolute finest.
However, there's a pretty stark paradox here. Despite these massive leaps in mobile tech, the physical backbone of the internet tells a totally different story. The internet isn't just floating around up in the cloud. It actually relies on a massive, sprawling network of physical submarine fiber optic cables resting right on the ocean floor. And if you map these cables out, you'll see they heavily connect North America, Europe, and parts of Asia, while entirely bypassing massive chunks of the globe, especially poorer nations in the global south. So this invisible infrastructure gap leaves whole regions completely digitally marginalized.
Let's transition to Section 4, the global shift, the relocation of manufacturing power.
You know, companies today rarely build a product in just one single factory anymore.
Instead, they rely on what we call global production networks, or GPNs. These are incredibly complex setups where different pieces of a single product are manufactured all over the world, entirely depending on where it happens to be cheapest or most efficient. Take the Boeing 787 Dreamliner as a quick example. It's physically assembled in the US, but its parts are manufactured in 11 different countries. It's like a giant global puzzle.
Let's move to the numbers and see how this builds up, because we've witnessed a massive shift in global power. Back in 1948, the United States accounted for almost 45% of all global manufacturing output. But by 2010, that number had plummeted to under 19%, while China surged up to over 18%. And actually, shortly after that 2010 mark, China formally overtook the US. We've literally watched a monumental relocation of industrial power shift away from the West and move directly toward Asia.
To ground this abstract concept in something you might literally be wearing right now, let's talk about athletic footwear. Research shows that major brands, like Nike for instance, produce the vast majority of their shoes in Southeast Asia. Why? Well, an athletic shoe actually requires highly complex stitching. Moving production to countries with lower labor costs just makes the whole process far cheaper. Plus, this scattered production model actually helps corporations legally bypass high US import tariffs based on how the shoes are constructed. It's a highly calculated, globally distributed dance.
And the entities leading that dance are transnational corporations, or TNCs. The statistics here are truly staggering. The top 100 TNCs employ roughly 15 million people worldwide. Together, they account for an unbelievable 2/3 of all global trade. Companies like Walmart, ExxonMobil, and General Motors are pulling in annual revenues that actually outsize the entire gross domestic products of 182 individual nations. They wield literal nation-state level power in our modern era. Bringing us to our final part, Section 5, Uneven Geographical Development. We'll see how the shrinking world is actually highly exclusive. Here is the hard-hitting reality of our globalized world. Despite the illusion that we're all perfectly interconnected in this global village, as of 2013, a massive 80% of global manufacturing was concentrated in just 15 nations. The ultimate twist of globalization is that it simultaneously pulls us together and pushes us apart. It creates these intense, concentrated hubs of incredible wealth and connectivity while entirely bypassing massive chunks of the planet. So that shrinking world we talked about, in reality, it's a highly exclusive club.
So what does this all mean? I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. When you look at the complex global networks that bring you your morning coffee, your fast fashion, or your electronics, who truly benefits and who bears the real cost of transporting your daily goods around the world? Next time you look at a label, remember the vast, invisible, and highly uneven machinery that put that item right into your hands. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me today.